Leader McCarthy, as you know from the meeting that I just referenced at the White House last week, the agreement was that the four leaders, Cornyn, Durbin, Hoyer, McCarthy, would begin negotiations to come up with a DACA solution. When people bring ideas to the table, that's constructive. That's what Goodlatte is doing, the chairman of the committee that's relevant here, along with McCall. And so Leader McCarthy and the other three leaders, based on that meeting and that agreement last week, are having those negotiations. I think that's constructive. I think that's exactly what we should be doing. And I'm confident that we'll get a solution before too long.
Last question.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, you said on the DACA, you said earlier that you expect it to be bipartisan. The Goodlatte bill, I understand you believe is a good bill, but Democrats do not. I mean,
well, I don't know the answer to that, by the way. I don't know if all Democrats are opposed to that, but shouldn't we be offering solutions? The Goodlatte bill is a DACA solution. The Goodlatte bill brings peace of mind to the DACA kids, and it also shows here's what the security piece looks like. So that is constructive. The Goodlatte bill doesn't say don't help DACA kids, deport. It doesn't do that. It says here's one way to solve this problem and give peace of mind to these DACA kids. I would like to think people think that that's probably a constructive thing to do.
But if it only gets Republican support, would you be willing to bring it to the floor if it had 218 Republicans, but not Democrats?
Anything we can do to pass to advance these causes and issues, I think, is helpful and constructive to getting the bipartisan agreement that's going to happen. Thank you. Thank you.
That is it. Paul Ryan wrapping up that news conference there, starting out talking about the military and the need to fund the military. Obviously, that deadline to fund the government coming up next Friday, January 19th. What was really important was when he finally weighed in as he was questioned on the FISA program. The House, as you know, just voted to renew the FISA program. Paul Ryan clarifying this was foreign terrorists, foreign soil. The 702 surveillance program had to renew it. And of course, that is what has happened. Jim Jordan came on shortly after, said, I voted against it. Rand Paul, no American should have their right to privacy taken away. Hashtag filibuster. We're going to have more on this show coming up on that. He moved on to immigration. DACA compromise is possible, said Speaker of the House Paul Ryan. He talked about that Goodlatte bill. He said that's a good bill. We'll also have more on immigration reform coming up in just a few moments.
This Fox News alert, President Trump repeatedly saying there was no collusion with Russia, as he explains why he thinks it's not likely he'll be interviewed by special counsel Robert Mueller. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Again, Sandra Smith. Hey, Sandra. Hey. Co-host of After the Bell on FBN, Melissa Francis. The editor of townhall.com, Katie Pavlich. And joining us today, outnumbered, we say, former Secret Service agent, former NYPD officer, and host of the Dan Bongino Show. Dan Bongino is here on our show.
Happy to be here. Always love it.
Great to see you.
Dan.
Yeah,
we got a lot that's kind of in your wheelhouse there.
Do we ever?
Yeah, we do. So let's jump into it, shall we? Okay. At a news conference Wednesday, President Trump made new remarks about special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. He insisted there was no collusion between his campaign and Russia. Watch.
There is collusion, but it's really with the Democrats and the Russians, far more than it is with the Republicans and the Russians. So the witch hunt continues. There was absolutely no collusion. Everybody knows it. Every committee. I've been in office now for 11 months. For 11 months, they've had this phony cloud over this administration, over our government, and it has hurt our government. It does hurt our government. It's a Democrat hoax that was brought up as an excuse for losing an election that, frankly, the Democrats should have won because they have such a tremendous advantage in the Electoral College. We'll see what happens. I mean, certainly I'll see what happens. But when they have no collusion and nobody's found any collusion at any level, it seems unlikely that you'd even have an interview.
Meanwhile, members of Trump's transition team are stepping up their scrutiny of Mueller's investigation. They allege the Mueller's team illegally obtained Trump transition team documents, and they want more information on a federal employee who they believe was involved in that. A lawyer for the president's transition submitted a Freedom of Information Act request, writing, quote, the transition is requesting records demonstrating a career GSA attorney made false statements to the press in an attempt to cover up the unlawful seizure of transition documents by Mr. Mueller. Dan, why is this problematic?
Gosh, where do we start with this case? This is the biggest mess. I'm telling you, it's the most explosive scandal. It's getting ready to burst with this OIG report coming out now. But on this specific incident about the Trump transition record emails with GSA, why not get a warrant? I was a federal investigator for 12 years and a local police officer for 4. Well, worked with the police department for 4, 2 years as a cop. Why not get a warrant in the most consequential counterintelligence investigation in American history? Why not? Basically because this is a hoax. I said to you before the show, we're asking all the wrong questions here. The question du jour has been, what was the dossier used to get a warrant on Trump? Wrong question. Important question, but the wrong one. The real question is, why get a warrant at all? Why was the Trump team being spied on? Nobody has pointed out one single predicate crime to point out why Donald Trump's team is being spied on. Not one.
Katie?
Well, and that's been the big question about what the Obama administration was doing during the transition period to get after some of the transition officials, Mike Flynn being one of them. When it comes to getting the warrants, there were questions still about Susan Rice's role, who was the former national security advisor to President Obama, the ambassador to the UN. Samantha Power allegedly was involved in this unmasking. So those are the questions still that we don't have the answers to. But when it comes to the collusion and Robert Mueller and whether the president will speak to him, he's been criticized over the last day or so because he said in the summer of last year that he would testify 100% and talk to Robert Mueller. That was before indictments were coming down for things unrelated to what this investigation was supposed to be about. And if I was Donald Trump's attorney, I wouldn't have him talking to him either.
No, it seems like it would be very foolish to go in and talk. I mean, I think for people in our audience, it's so hard to understand what's going on. There's so much back and forth. It's so confusing. I mean, for us, it's very hard to sort through. It's frustrating that we seem to be conflating and putting together the idea of not spying on American citizens. I mean, you can imagine the abuse that could go on. At the same time, we're trying to stay safe from terror.
Well, but one thing that we know is that the president is saying that you don't have to imagine what could happen if there were abuse through the Pfizer program, because he feels, Dan, that in fact he was part of that scoop up through the Pfizer program where they were listening in.
Seems like no doubt.
And that Americans, he being one of them, got caught up in that.
This is complicated. You're right, Melissa. But let me point out 3 quick things here.
Okay.
Number one, if there is a Pfizer warrant that was issued in October, why did Jim Comey acknowledge an investigation into Trump in the summer, pre-October? Why did Jim Clapper, on the record on Meet the Press, say there was no Pfizer warrant? And number 3, what was the predicate crime that started the largest spying operation
Well, what could it be,
in US
though?
history?
It's an
would
interesting
it be?
question.
Because the Obama administration, I'm absolutely convinced, needed to dirty up Trump officials in a setup in the event
So
he was
quick
elected
question.
the
If
president.
everything you guys are saying are true and you're so adamant about all of this, the other side says then sit down. Then just have
it up.
Dan Bongino, you're on fire on Twitter and now on Outnumbered. Thank you.
Thanks.
Some House Democrats are set to make a statement during President Trump's upcoming State of the Union address. They say they'll be raising awareness for the Me Too movement, But is it the best idea to take a page right out of Hollywood's playbook on that? And President Trump and Republicans say they want to make a deal to protect the Dreamers. Even some Democrats appear to be on board with that. But liberal activists say, well, they may be holding them back. That's next.
Fox News alerts some drama on the House floor of a critical national security program. It allows spy agencies to collect intelligence on foreign targets abroad. Today, the House voted to reject an amendment that would have imposed new restrictions on the FISA program, and they reauthorized it as is. But earlier, President Trump appeared to complicate the process. He sent a tweet criticizing FISA, and then he tweeted in support of it. Here's the first one. House votes on controversial FISA Act today. This is the act that may have been used with the help of the discredited and phony dossier to so badly surveil and abuse the Trump campaign by the previous administration and others. Then 2 hours later, he tweeted, "With that being said, I have personally directed the fix to the unmasking process since taking office. And today's vote is about foreign surveillance of foreign bad guys on foreign land. We need it. Get smart." Privacy advocates had called for curbs on how FISA collects information on American citizens. Earlier today, Democrats called for a delay in the vote, saying the president created confusion. Did he?
No, absolutely not. The President of the United States and some of his representatives on the Trump team were unquestionably surveilled, unmasked, and recorded. This is on the record. Yet, The ODNI under Obama, the Director of National Intelligence, is on the record saying there was no warrant. So let me ask you this, Sandra. You have a recording that randomly shows up out there, a transcript of a conversation you had, and no one can tell you if there was a warrant or if you committed a crime? But I don't blame him for that.
That's why I think the president's two messages are confusing, because for a year now, more than a year now, there have been concerns about the unmasking that happened during the Trump transition team as a result of a lawful appointed transition team members who were going to work in the White House, speaking with foreign people on foreign soil, which this FISA agreement covers, right? And it scoops up American citizens who are talking to them. So although this targets people on foreign soil, American citizens can still be unmasked and listened to. So the president is saying this may have been used against his campaign. That is true. At the same time, it doesn't actually change that to address the problem in the legislature.
And part of the problem is that once they scoop you up and unmask you, it can be even on the smallest thing.
Right.
It makes prosecution that much easier because that comes into evidence, is the way that it's been explained to me by legal experts. The other issue is whether or not, and you know, you look at the two tweets, whether or not there's a conversation about who wants anything to happen on their watch, Dan.
So the Speaker of the House was asked multiple questions by reporters as we were sitting here a few moments ago when he held that press availability. One, he was asked, does the president know what FISA is? He responded, he's aware of it. He knows what FISA is. And then they asked, does he understand it? And Paul Ryan said he just has concerns about other parts of FISA. He went on to say it is well known he has concerns about FISA. He put out something that clarifies that, to your point.
You want this summed up in one tweet by Congressman Justin Amash? Get a warrant. You're going to surveil an American citizen anywhere in the world. Get a warrant. Show the PC the probable cause and get a warrant. End of story. Full stop.
The minute you hear that voice on the other line, since we're talking specifically about wiretapping, but once you've observed and there's an American in that mix, you need a warrant. And Senator Rand Paul told me yesterday the problem with not getting one and the slippery slope that reveals is the fact that you just put so much hands in the power of a government that can't even look at all the information that it's gathering on all of us.
Yep. We've got another Fox News alert for you.
Got to include the wall. We need the wall for security. We need the wall for safety. We need the wall for stopping the drugs from pouring in. I would imagine that the people in the room, both Democrat and Republican, I really believe they're going to come up with a solution to the DACA problem, which has been going on for a long time, and maybe beyond that, immigration as a whole. But any solution has to include the wall, because without the wall, it all doesn't work.
That was President Trump yesterday, insisting that any bill to protect dreamers must include funding for his promised border wall. This, as a bipartisan group of lawmakers say they're closing in on an agreement on immigration reform, potentially as early as this week. Democratic Congressman Steny Hoyer, who is a part of that group, sounding optimistic just this morning.
But we had a meeting yesterday with Mr. McCarthy, Senator Durbin, Senator Cornyn, and myself to try to get a process which we can discuss the issues that both sides want to discuss. We believe central to the any action that we take is the protection of the dreamers. I think there's a consensus. I think there's an overwhelming majority of the House. I think there's a majority of the Senate who all, once a bill gets to the floor which protects dreamers, will vote for it.
Remember, he was sitting next to the president at that meeting earlier this week. Meanwhile, there's reportedly been a rift in the Democratic Party as negotiators are under pressure from activists and other constituencies who fear they'll give too much to Republicans in a Dreamers deal. And this is nothing new for Democrats. You may remember House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi was heckled last September during a news conference by activists accusing the party of not fighting hard enough to protect illegals from deportation.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. You do not. You don't know what you're talking about.
We all remember that moment, right?
Yeah,
well, Mike Emanuel joins us now from Capitol Hill with the latest on the ongoing negotiations. Hello, Michael.
Sandra, good afternoon to you. There's been a serious push here on Capitol Hill trying to address the complicated issue of immigration. Today, the House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy blasted the House Democratic leader for forcing the issue now.
Nancy Pelosi has been holding the country hostage. She has been trying to shut the government down over an issue that does not expire until March. We're showing good faith, walking down to solve this problem, but you can't just deal with DACA by itself, because you'll be right back at the same situation in another year.
4 House Republicans rolled out their own immigration plan late yesterday. They say their bill provides DACA recipients, those young people brought to this country illegally by their parents, a reasonable legislative solution, which includes strong anti-fraud measures and ensures they do not get a special path to citizenship.
We're giving them the opportunity to every 3 years have for eternity legal status here, to be able to work, go to school, travel, and take the existing paths that we have in our system to citizenship, but not go ahead of anybody else.
There are also bipartisan efforts on the Senate side of the Capitol trying to address this complicated issue of immigration.
There'll always be sticking points. We have to compromise. It's the only way to get this done. It's not a bill I would have written by myself, nor one that Lindsey Graham would have written by himself. But we've tried to meet the president's criteria of things that are important to include, and I think we're very close to doing that.
Also today, the Senate Democratic leader talked about the types of security his side is willing to accept.
Democrats are interested in effective, practical border security measures. We want what secures the border the most, not what sounds the best, not what was a political slogan in a campaign, but what actually protects our border.
Democrats believe they have leverage, so they want this issue addressed now. Republicans say there is no rush. They still have time before the president's March deadline. Sandra?
Mike Emanuel, thank you for that report.
Sure.
A lot to work off of there. Katie, you heard Chuck Schumer say we want what is best to protect the border.
We want real border security.
And you said what?
The Democrat Chuck Schumer, which I said is totally not true. They want open borders. They are being pushed by these open border illegal immigration groups not to compromise here. But here's the deal. Democrats have already agreed to everything that was in the House bill that was introduced yesterday. They already worked on the Gang of Eight, which included ending chain migration and the visa lottery program. Many of them, including Chuck Schumer, voted for the 2006 Secure Fence Act, which was essentially the same thing. Trump just calls it a wall. It didn't mean fencing in every single area, every single mile of the border. It just meant putting it where it works, and it does work. We've seen in Arizona, they put a fence at the Yuma sector. Illegal crossings and drug cartel loads coming through there went down by 98% as a result of that wall. Yeah. And the DACA thing. 70% of the country agrees on DACA. Nobody can agree on anything these days, and yet most people do, including Trump supporters.
But when you watch the tape playback from that 55-minute televised meeting, that bipartisan meeting, you got to see some of the back and forth. You saw Representative Cuellar of Texas had charts and figures and everything. Of course, look how long the border is along his state. So you got to see some of that back and forth, and I think it's disingenuous for critics to look at this process now and say that they can't get somewhere. And I wonder how much of the base, they're mad at Nancy Pelosi. They bum rushed. I don't even call it heckling. Old school, stepped up on her and called her a liar with live microphones and phones up and everything. I mean, they're angry with the Democrats for not having solved this issue already.
And they're angry with everybody for not solving this. I was talking to David Kohler yesterday. I hope he doesn't get mad at me for sharing Kohler Faucets Manufacturing. He was talking about the dramatic labor shortage in this country, that we need labor. Right, but they're so frustrated about we need to straighten out our legal immigration system. He's talking about people who want to come, who want to work. They need the workers, but this has gotten so political and it's such a mess, and we're not having an honest conversation about how to have the labor in our country that we need, but do it legally, do it the right way, bring people in, not based on all this other stuff, but people who have skills and want to work.
Right, Dan, but when you bring up merit-based, people get so offended by that. They say you're going to leave people out of the loop.
Yeah, the deal's never going to happen. The Democrats aren't going to give Trump a victory at immigration, number one. Number two, they need the votes to replace the votes they're losing.
What about the president in that meeting the other day saying, I'm going to sign anything Congress puts on my desk?
He said, I have confidence in the people in this room.
Keep in mind, I'll tell you why it's never going to happen. The this argument speaks to the downfall of the Democrat Party. It's interesting that they refer to Americans as deplorables and refer to everybody else outside of America coming here illegally.
I don't know.
as
Republicans
dreamers.
are going after their own here for looking like they're going to bend too far the other way and trying to incorporate DACA into this.
This deal's never going to have, the Dems will never give them a win. No way, not on this.
We have to leave it there. A high-stakes decision is looming, many of them, obviously. But this one over whether or not President Trump will effectively end the Obama-era Iran nuclear deal. And now the supreme leader in Iran is issuing a direct threat at the United States. Plus, growing questions over that anti-Trump dossier and whether the Obama administration used it to justify spying on the Trump campaign.
And top GOP lawmakers are demanding answers just one day after a top Democratic senator released some transcripts of an interview with the founder of the firm behind the so-called anti-Trump dossier. Now top lawmakers are saying, why stop there? Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted, it's not enough to simply release the transcript from the co-founder of Fusion GPS, Glenn Simpson. I want the entire story regarding Fusion GPS, the dossier, and the Department of Justice to be revealed. And Congressman Mark Meadows tweeted, did the FBI take the Clinton paid-for dossier to the FISA court in 2016 and use it to spy on the Trump campaign? We've asked for the FISA application, and they won't tell us. And, you know, this is kind of in part what you were talking about.
The dossier at this point, it's clear as day, is used to get a FISA warrant to cover for an already ongoing setup of the Trump team. It's clear as day. Let me ask you this. Put this timeline together. This is all publicly available information. Why does Mike Rogers of the NSA visit Trump Tower on November 17th and tell nobody about it? Mysteriously, the next day, the Trump team disappears up to Bedminster, New Jersey. The following day, the Obama team, which already doesn't like Mike Rogers, is all of a sudden calling for him to leave. Do you seriously believe that's all coincidental? He told Trump that this was ongoing and they were spying on him. I'm telling you, Obama spied on Trump. It's just a question of why and who started it.
I'm looking at Katie react to you, so I want to get a one-on-one reaction there.
I think Dan Bongino knows a lot more and has some sourcing outside of what I have at the moment. But we do know, going back to the dossier, there are questions that were asked of the Department of Justice. Rod Rosenstein, who is in charge of the special counsel, was asked directly if the FBI paid for it. He refused to answer that question. He was also asked if the FBI used it to obtain that FISA warrant. He refused to answer that question as well. It doesn't mean he doesn't know the answer. We just weren't told whether that was the case or not.
Melissa?
This is really scary stuff. I mean, it is the logical extension of what everybody always worries about, is you put these things in place in order to keep Americans safe, and then do politicians use it for their own political purposes to spy on each other? It seems like we have clear evidence in here that is what it was used for, and it's just... You know, it's terrifying as an American citizen. At the same time, we have to balance that with this idea, it's simultaneously true, that we have to protect Americans from terror.
So according to people like Senator Rand Paul and others who are against, not being able to separate our freedoms from scooping up information to protect us, they say it doesn't take that long to get a warrant. It's not like you're slowing the process down so much that you're going to just leave it way laid open for anybody to come and wreak terror on all of us.
Yeah, I've sworn to warrants. They are not difficult to get if you're actually chasing a criminal. The problem is, to this day, nobody can answer why they were chasing Trump. And let me ask you one thing about the testimony here. Simpson said something in that testimony that's damning, and I don't know if anybody picked up on it. He said the investigation started, and he went to the FBI because he had some information on an inside source in the Trump campaign, which he acknowledges is the New York Times reported story of Papadopoulos meeting with the Australian foreign minister, who says he fed it to American intel.
Let me ask you a question, though, because when you say nobody can say what the original thing was, I think people out in the audience or Democrats would say, what about Manafort? You know, I mean, somebody who was, everyone was very suspicious of from the get-go and had lots of Russian dealings. Is that enough?
But that has nothing to, all of those were prior business dealings with Ukraine in conjunction with this lobbying. It had nothing to do with spying on Mike Flynn.
It had been started 3 years prior.
Pop this up on the screen, though, because it kind of touches what you're saying from the Wall Street Journal. Democrats and the media seized on, and that would be Glenn Simpson's claim, that the dossier supported information the FBI already had from a human source from inside the Trump organization. Turns out he wasn't referring to a confidential informant from within the Trump team, but the fact that the FBI had been tipped off by a foreign diplomat about a Trump staffer, George Papadopoulos. So the Wall Street Journal also echoing what you're saying.
Here's the kicker in that. The foreign diplomat in the New York Times' own reporting says he reported it to American intel agencies. How did that get to Fusion GPS? They're not intelligence officers. Fusion GPS was deputized by the Obama
through
team
the FBI.
to hit the Trump.
That's
you
the
think it was
question.
through the FBI?
Probably through the FBI.
Well,
they won't answer that question. He was asked in this testimony, Glenn Simpson, were you in touch with the FBI? Did the FBI use your information as part of their investigation? And he refused to answer the question.
All of this is public record, by the way. I mean, you may be able to tie some strings and loops together from your, sourcing that you already have. Yeah, and you were Secret Service, so you probably have some gifts the rest of us don't have. But a lot of this is public information. It just takes a close look.
Oh, the testimony is for sure. All right, we are awaiting a decision from President Trump on whether to recertify the Iran nuclear deal and continue waiving sanctions against the regime. He's made it clear he does not like that deal. Meantime, widespread protests continue in Iran, and the White House is denouncing Iran's arrest of protesters, writing, quote, "We will not remain silent as the Iranian dictatorship represses the basic rights of its citizens and will hold Iran's leaders accountable for any violations." Iran's supreme leader tweeting in response, quote, "U.S. officials should know that, firstly, they have missed their target, and if they target Iran again, they will fail. Secondly, they have inflicted damage upon Iran in recent days, and they should know this won't be left without a response." Your conclusion from that is what, Dan?
Well, someone should tell the Iranians we have an Iran deal. They don't seem to know that based on their continued pursuit of nuclear weapons. I mean, someone should actually advise them. But secondly, I think that the defense against not pursuing future sanctions is weak. Folks have said, well, they'll be unilateral. Other countries are still going to do business that's already ongoing with the Iranians. The United States is the world leader. We're the 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's time for us to say enough's enough and set a standard.
So will the president recertify this deal, Melissa?
I hope he does not. I mean, it seems like this is the exact moment to put as much pressure on Iran as you possibly can. I mean, when you look at the protests that are going on and you see the fact that, they were supposed to, Coca-Cola and Apple iPhones were supposed to change minds inside Iran. That didn't happen. None of the money made it to the right people. I mean, all the things that you would have predicted. Once again, there is an opportunity. There's a movement within the country, and this would be the exact time to apply as much pressure as possible.
Well, there is counter thought on that, though, is that you want to give that movement time to breathe. Could that also happen?
I think there's a window. I mean, there's a window of time where the United States has been very forceful in condemning the regime and backing the protesters because there's only a limited amount of time before...
Verbally backing the protesters.
Right. In terms of the protests and the way that they were started, and a crux of that has a direct connection to the Iran nuclear deal. People in Iran are very upset that all of the money that the United States gave Iran as part of this deal didn't go to the people of Iran to help their economy, to help people on the ground, to help the middle class. It went to funding terrorism, Hezbollah, and to send missiles into Yemen to then be sent into Saudi Arabia. One more thing on this in the background of the president's decision making on this and whether he will recertify it. There's two questions. Do they have evidence that Iran is directly violating the nuclear agreement? Right now, they do not. What they do have evidence of is that they are violating the era and the spirit of the deal, which is ballistic missile testing, threatening the United States, continuing to send money to Hezbollah,
Yemen, which is what Nikki Haley, our ambassador to the UN, had on a board. If he decertifies, it'll be based on spirit of the deal, not necessarily a direct violation of the agreement. And Nikki Haley showed us at the United Nations, Dan, that and she's invited other nations to come. You can come and look at the markings that just fall short of made in Iran on some of those weapons in Yemen.
Well, you have to remember the deal. For some folks are confused on the deal. The deal did not stop the Iranians from making nuclear weapons. It simply extended out a timeline.
Right.
And the key component of the deal that everybody should have just openly mocked when Obama signed it is, oh, by the way, we're not allowed to pursue inspections of their military facilities without them telling us. Oh, where would you produce a nuclear weapon?
And terrorism wasn't even a factor. Let's not forget the Obama administration admitted, John Kerry and President Obama, a lot of this money we're giving them will probably go to terrorism, which will go to attacking the United States. But we don't really care much.
Just to remind everybody, one of those weapons that had those Iran markings landed at a public airport with passengers where people are flying back and forth in Saudi Arabia.
All right. Well, after Sunday's Golden Globes reignited focus on the issue of sexual harassment, now some House Democrats reportedly planning to take the Me Too movement straight to President Trump's State of the Union address. But does their plan go too far? We shall debate.
Democrats hoping to seize on the Me Too movement are reportedly planning to invite victims of sexual assault to President Trump's State of the Union address later this month. This is some House Democrats are already planning to wear black to show solidarity with the movement, including Democratic Congresswoman Jackie Speier, who told NBC News that it's all part of a, quote, culture change that is sweeping the country, and Congress is embracing it. Their plan echoes actresses at last Sunday's Golden Globes Award who wore black to bring attention to the issue amid a series of sexual misconduct scandals that have rocked Hollywood as well as Washington. Katie, what do you think? What do you think?
I'm going to try to temper my reaction here.
Uh-oh, don't.
No, I think
Please don't.
I think it's a good thing that they're bringing victims of sexual assault to show that this does happen, and there are real people who are at the basis of these stories that we keep hearing. However, the hypocrisy level on this, from Hollywood to the Democratic Party, is
skyrocketing.
Right. It's just unbelievable. Let's start with Hollywood, who started this let's all wear black thing. Hollywood for 30 years has been debasing society by pushing the sexualization of young people through the television screen. They've repeatedly fought for the ratings on movies to be lowered as they put sexual content into every single part of our lives. You can't watch a TV show now without having that in. And then you have Democrats who glorified people as early as the 2012 DNC convention, like Ted Kennedy, and said he was a women's rights champion when he literally left a woman to drown in his car. And so for them now to have this moment, I'm glad that they maybe have decided that they want to make this an issue. But just a couple of weeks ago, they were regretting that maybe they jumped the gun with Al Franken and asking for him to resign. So what is the end goal here? Is there going to be a solution to this problem, or are we just going to dress up in different colors and act like we care?
Well, and the end game is the important point, too, because, I mean, you saw such a love for the idea among Democrats and some of them and Hollywood people who were in the audience at the Globes of Oprah Winfrey's going to. Do you know how many pictures and memes now are out with Oprah Winfrey and Harvey Weinstein? Hey, you can have a friend. I mean, she's kissing him on the cheek. Those are memes now. And can you explain this? Look, it's going to exist. She was part of Hollywood. She's made blockbuster films and has an Oscar. The question, though, and you saw it from Seal, Seal, a man asking in the industry of music, why is it that Oprah never spoke up before for all of these?
Oh, no,
But
he's not asking. He's saying she knew.
I mean, there's hypocrisy everywhere on this. I mean, it doesn't matter what side you look at. You could say Republicans are supposed to be the party of family values. And then when you look at Republicans that have been on the wrong side of this, I just wonder, I like the awareness, but I wonder how hard is it to wear black? You know, I mean, like,
I don't know. I'm wearing a black dress today. It was on the color wheel. I don't have a political reason.
How much of a sacrifice is that? I mean,
like a little
if
bell
we put
sleeve.
up the few women at the Oscars who came out and wore red, or I'm sorry, at the Golden Globes, we have a picture of them as well that we can show you. But it's just they just didn't wear black or whatever it was.
Well, they must not care about sexual assault then.
Well, no, but this is a good point to raise. These were the only 3 women who showed up at that awards ceremony, not wearing black. And when asked about it, they said, we think that there's more to this than what we're wearing or not wearing. Yeah. And it's a fair point, right? I mean, has the movement taken on a whole new mind of its own to where it's not even addressing the root of the problem?
Ladies, Hollywood gave a standing ovation to Roman Polanski. There's just a report recently reviewed, by the way, that behind the scenes, the mechanical portions of Hollywood, not the front stage portion where people see you, that women are vastly underrepresented in this so-called, liberal enclave.
Look at the new movie. The Money movie out, and you look at the change and the difference in how the men were paid and how the female actors were paid.
By the way, if Trump is smart, he should invite real victims of sexual assault, the Clinton allegation people. They invite them as well.
All right, we solved it. They will be shown. No, they will be shown live. That's the word from NBC when it comes to showing players taking the knee during the national anthem. This is at next month's Super Bowl. Whether this is the right course and should we expect a fiery tweet from the president if this happens? We'll debate.
We want our flag respected. And we want our national anthem respected also.